Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to grow your firm by providing virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Jamie Na, and joined once again by Jody Grunden.
Hey, Jamie.
All right. And then our guest today is Andrew Tucker from Practice Executive. Very excited to have him here. Normally, we wait for our course participants to graduate before we bring them on, but Jody's like, we got to get Andrew on here. He's so interesting. He's so fascinating. He's really fun to talk to. So let's get him on here, even though he's not all the way done yet. So, Andrew, I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and start a little bit about your background and kind of how you found our course and a little bit about your company.
Absolutely.
Hey, before you do that, Andrew, real quick, Jamie, you gotta tell people what about your Harry Potter mark up here. If you're seeing Jamie right now, he's got like a big, huge line that goes from the top of his forehead to his nose.
I wish I had a great story. So everybody knows I play basketball a lot in the mornings. I wish I was like, oh, I got this elbow, and then the scuffle broke out. But no, my wife one morning before work, it was a couple days ago, she's like, oh, we have to vacuum behind my daughter's bed. I'm like, I have to get to a meeting, so I'm rushing and trying to move her bed out, and I'm pushing the bed out, and all of a sudden I hit up, and she has a floating shelf there that I hit my head right in the smack in the middle of. And anybody that knows the forehead, it bleeds like crazy. So I'm sitting there bleeding, holding the cloth, and trying to get to my next meeting. So that is, if you're on video and see this big mark on my head, that's exactly what happened. So.
That's too funny. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me. So but like you said, my name is Andrew Tucker, and I've been working specifically with dentists since 2014. So kind of a different unique background. I actually started in law rather than accounting. So that was kind of where I first got my training, and came out of law school in 2013, and the joke I always make with my clients is that I didn't need much practice to be good at it, so I didn't practice for long. So I shifted into financial planning and advising with a group that kind of had a national reputation with dentists, and kind of on a bluff to get the job. He said, hey, look, I really want a CPA. And I hadn't really thought a whole lot about it, but I said, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like in North Carolina, you have to be supervised by a CPA in order to be able to become one. So I did it, and I think it's been helpful in my journey of being able to create a virtual CFO firm, that I didn't come into it with an accounting mentality from day one. I kind of knew the tricks or the ways that I kind of came up with shortcuts to understand things that I didn't understand before I understood accounting. Dust a lot of those things off for my clients. So I parted ways with that firm back in 2019, and just due to some contractual reasons had to lay low for a little while. But back in November, all of that was lifted, and I was able to unveil Practice Executive, which is really something that I created almost entirely from scratch based on the Summit model and what I've been able to experience from you guys over the last few months.
So it sounds like a true entrepreneur, right? You started in law. You went from a law to maybe a kind of a consulting thing for another firm, and then you did your own practice a little bit, and then you came in and started this brand new practice in November, and started it from scratch, 0 clients, and kind of tell me your story from 0 clients to now. I mean, it's only a couple months ago, so had to be a rough going, I would think, or maybe not.
Well, fortunately, I had 0 clients when we started, but I had a good contingency of people who they said, look, I don't know what's in store for you next, but I've enjoyed working with you. I feel like you've got a lot of answers. Conversations with you are valuable. We can slow play it. We can see where things go. So I am so blessed that I had a good, strong core group of people who, whenever the time was right, and I was able to say, hey, here's what we're doing. And thankfully I had, a good blueprint, a good framework for what it was going to look like, that whenever I was able to give them the introduction, they looked at it and said, this is perfect. This is what you should have been doing all along, and was able to start with. We kind of made the promise that we'd have 5 spots because we knew onboarding would be intense, and we would just kind of cycle 5 at a time until we found our capacity. And I had given myself 10 weeks to fill those first 5 spots, and we filled them in the first 2 weeks. So it's very thankful, very fortunate. It definitely helps a lot that there was a good plan in place, but I can't take full credit for that.
No, I think to me, obviously we interview a lot of CFOs, both to hire at Summit and then within the program. And I think one of you have two things going for you. One is a vertical, which I know we've talked a lot about in this podcast before, and how you really have that area of expertise that you can come in and say, hey, no one knows this area like we know this area. And I think two, the thing you have is that you have that background outside of finance. And I think that's really helpful for someone to come in and be like, hey, I am an accountant, I am a CPA, but I've also done these other things. So I think that really has to work for you. Can you talk a little bit about how that works and how that has worked for you in selling those 5 spots?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like, for us, we don't talk about cost, and it makes sense because some people get into cost of services sold. Cost of goods sold is a very valuable metric for a lot of people, but for working with people in the service industry, it's a little murky, it's a little difficult. So I just take it, and when I first started, I said, understanding these expenses, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to think about this as cost of goods sold versus operating, etc. We looked at it and said, all right, what's variable, what's purely variable, what is fixed, and then what's the stuff that's kind of hybridized. So for so much of industry, we're taught, hey, labor is a variable expense, labor is part of cost of goods sold, but the reality is the person answering your phones is a fixed expense in a dental practice. Whether you have $100,000 of collections or $2 million of collections, that person's a fixed expense. What's nice about that is I feel like tools like Giraffe, which I know we both use, things like that are really well inclined to help articulate that message. So that's what we do is when we go in, QuickBooks does a great job of already using the accounting jargon. When we use our dashboards, we boil it down to just simplicity's sake of how do we explain financial concepts to non-financial folks. And I think that was a big part of it. Another cool thing about what we do too is we get the chance to offer, this is where we're a little unique compared to I think a lot of other participants, where we offer general counsel services. So like my afternoon today is going to be reviewing 4 different associate contracts that are going to go out to our partner, different doctors and our partner firms, which is nice because a lot of times that can be the biggest hang up for growth and development for folks. So it's a little unique that we get the chance to do things like that for our clients.
Are you interested in offering virtual CFO services at your firm or scaling your existing service offerings? The Virtual CFO Playbook, How to Land $60,000 a Year Clients and Provide a Killer Client Experience, is an online series of modules that will equip you with essential tools for creating and delivering scalable VCFO services. These approaches have helped Summit CPA grow from $500,000 to upwards of $5 million in revenue over the past decade. If you're ready to grow your firm, visit summitcpa.net/VCFO Playbook to enroll now.
So tell me, so you went from no clients at all, and you met with that very first client, first prospect. You've had a relationship with them prior to that. Tell me about that sales process. How did that actually go? Was it were you really nervous? It kind of walk me through that. That 1 hour call that you had with that prospect.
Yeah. So to say I was, really nervous is probably an understatement. But what's nice is having the confidence of how things are priced, having the confidence of being able to deliver to someone and say, look, here is a spreadsheet. This isn't me, because I think the biggest thing that people in service industries worry about is kind of getting spot checked. It's the old sitcom trope where you pull up to the filling station and your car breaks down and you ask how much it's going to cost to fix your car, and they look at you and say how much you got.
Right,
that's
right.
What it's a little bit of that going on. So it's nice because it really, and on multiple occasions, we had the chance to say, all right, well, what if we turn this on or turn this off? And then when the spreadsheet is the one that's dictating the price, number one, everybody knows that you've thought about it going into it. It truly is a set price. But number two, people understand the value and expense for services. So that was the biggest thing for me. It was, I feel weird calling it a security blanket, but I think that's what it was. It was very much so a security blanket to walk into the situation and go, all right, I know our services are worth this. I know we're providing this value. Having this tool to be able to demonstrate and toggle is a really helpful thing. And we had people select. Now we kind of look at, we've kind of modified our tiers to where we've got full-blown virtual CFO, and then our intermediate step, rather than calling it comptroller, we call it family office services, because we do have that legal component. So it's really, are you a practice owner who's really focused on driving growth and trying to get big fast, or are you someone who's got a great revenue, you're more focused on family and generational wealth, and you just need someone to be able to focus more on kind of where everything's setting? And we don't manage investments. We've got an outside group that we collaborate with that we really enjoy partnering with on that. But I think that's one of the things that's so nice about it, is that when someone looks at it, they can decide what fits for them. And I've always historically been maybe an over accommodating person, an overly flexible person, and being able to have the buckets really helps for us to be able to drive what we're trying to deliver for our clients and create some standardization to it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because it takes that scope creep out, right? I mean, because like you said, it's like if you say you do everything, and then all of a sudden you are doing everything, even things that you never thought you would do.
Exactly.
That's what you told them, right? And so when you break it out into little buckets there, like you had mentioned, it makes it a lot easier. And that sale, how much was that sale roughly worth? I mean, what did you end up selling that for on that very first one?
Yeah, so but the way our pricing is, for unless there's like add-ons or something else kind of traditional, the VCFO without cash flow planning and things like that, we charge about $1,000 a week, $995 a week. So about $52,000. And we've got people who kind of range all over the map. The larger they are, obviously, the more expensive that is. But on average, we're somewhere around $52,000.
So out of your 5 clients, roughly 52 is what your average is.
That's right.
I think that's great.
So it's
because
like a small house.
Yes, you're at a really good price point, and I think that's one of the value to hopefully get people listening to this podcast, and part of the course is I think the common mistake for many business owners is to start off cheap. Right, like I've worked with clients before that they're like, yeah, I just need to get in the door, so I'm gonna like reduce my prices, and I'm gonna have these really low prices, and then it's really hard to go up from there. And so like I think understanding your worth and coming into that first meeting and those first couple conversations and understanding your worth is worth its weight in gold, because now you understand that, and you're only going to go up from there. And I think that's huge, because again, $52,000 a client is a really great starting point, and it's much better than a lot of people we talk to. They start a lot lower than that. And I think the other thing you talked about there is the pricing schedule, and I think you're going to love that as you grow, because I know that Jody's an awesome salesman, but like it's pretty easy to give that spreadsheet to anybody within the firm and say, hey, go make a sale for us, or this person you met somewhere as a dentist somewhere, and they want to talk to you. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to throw you over to Andrew. Like, we already have this relationship. Let's have this conversation. And pulling that spreadsheet up makes good salesmen out of regular people. I think that's really
absolutely
important, so.
Yeah. It's funny because that's my thought when I first saw it. I thought to myself, this is the perfect sales tool for an accountant.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what this is for. This is a sales tool for an accountant to develop that confidence. And, one thing that I have personally experienced is the existential crisis of being so overwhelmed that you don't know how you're going to get back to everyone, right? And not just on a busy season perspective, but on like a random, September in 2019. I can remember September of 2019 answering an email and 10 replaced it before it felt like I was playing whack-a-mole. It's really the traditional method of things. It's Tetris, it's Space Invaders, it's let's play this game until it moves so fast we fail. You're predetermined to fail. That's the whole point of the thing, is let's get to the point of failure. And that's whenever I envisioned what were we going to do on the other side of this, it was, all right, we've got to make sure that we find a way to be, and the way I kind of preface it to the folks who I've kind of rolled over is, hey, I want to be everything for a few rather than being a little for a lot, because I would rather have the in-depth relationship. Our biggest challenge we had was helping people understand who we maybe had more of a skilled relationship with in the past, understand exactly how intense and in-depth this really would be, and it's been it's been really awesome for them. They get it, they see it, they love it, and nobody's been unhappy. In the process, we've tried to keep a lot of transparency and things while we're getting everybody onboarded, because 5 at one time is a lot, but that's pretty much what we're solely dedicated to right now. So.
Yeah, you said a couple things there, that really drive home. The transparency is something that we've always, from day one, taken as as gospel type of thing. Because I think the more transparent you are with people, employees, clients, you name it, it could be your marriage. the better off things go. Because transparency can't get you in trouble. I think the stories behind being not transparent can. All the thoughts and like the transparency with the pricing guide. You pop it up and here's the story. Versus giving them a price the next day through an email. They're like, well, how did you get that? Is it because I'm a doctor, or is it because I make a ton of money? Is that why I'm getting priced this? And there's always that story that people make up. The story is never, very, very rarely true, right? It's the story behind the people that are non-transparent. I truly believe transparency is the way to go, really, and with just about everything in life. And I think it's really condones it in here. The other thing is the pricing guide designed specifically for accountants. You're 100% right there. That was one of the big things that when we designed it, it was like, well, how can we design it so that I personally, because I was doing most of the sales at that point, don't have to be the focal point on every conversation on price. Because now we've got 100 clients or 50 clients or whatever. I can't be that person going to every single person and talking about, okay, now here's your new price because you changed your scope of your deal, or any new client coming in. So when we designed it, it was like, well, let's design it so like anybody can scope it out and come up with the exact same number. If I gave a prospect to you, Andrew, you'd be able to scope it out identical to me. Jamie, same thing. And then it gave our basically our team the autonomy to be able to make changes as we go. So in the event that one of our CFOs is working with a client, and let's say that they didn't want us to do any kind of back office accounting, but maybe their bookkeeper stepped aside for some reason, they want us to jump in and maybe do the bookkeeping or the accounts payable or something like that, then at that point the CFO can price it all by themselves, because they can pop that same spreadsheet open, the calculator we call it, and they can click things off and on. Here's the new price. And I think that really makes it really nice for the CFOs. It makes it nice for the client, makes it nice for the company, and it really takes away a lot of the extra admin costs that you might have in any other way or any other approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing it. Then the last thing you said was the working with a few versus many. It's kind of funny. Well, it's not funny. I spoke with a CPA firm, very reputable CPA firm. Gentleman's doing a great job. And we're talking about, I think roughly $6-7 million in revenue. And I'm like, oh, how many clients do you have? He's like, I have about 700 clients. I'm like, oh my gosh, 700 clients. I go, because we're like a $9 million firm, going to be about 11 this year, and we've got about 150 clients. So I would much rather work with 150 clients than 700 clients any day of the week, because it's all those different interruptions that you get. From the more clients you have, the more interruptions you get, and it just makes that day, like you're talking about, pretty crazy, to where eventually you can't handle it, because you're putting out fires all the time, it seems like, and with the fewer clients, I think you've got that option to really kind of focus in on it and really deliver an outstanding service. And that's the key there, because the name of the game is not building revenue to where it is or building profits to where it is. It's really giving that outstanding service to the clients so that your reputation continues to build, and then you can continue to bring clients on because they're super, super satisfied. And that's when with our model and your model now is that the retention rate is super, super important. And so, we've got a 94% retention rate. I'm sure you'll imagine that. I mean, it'll probably be even higher for you at first because of the fewer clients, but you'll grow and you want to make sure you're maintaining that. And really, the only reason you want people leaving is because they're selling, right? That's the perfect reason for someone to leave. And so that's the kind of the end goal. So yeah, it's a lot of great points with that comment.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had someone, dental sales are hot right now, like particularly, larger practices. I mean, we're talking about $20-30 million in some cases, like things that you didn't dream were possible in dentistry a decade ago. And I had somebody who they were kind of counting on working with us in this and just didn't get the chance to because they sold. And she was like, I hate that we're not going to be able to work with you in this way. And I was like, are you kidding me? I get to tell you I helped you sell your business for $20 million. That's the best. that's better. That's better publicity than anything. I'd love to, like, we'll still be pals. You're on the Christmas card list. Call me whenever you want. But no, that's almost better. I
100% agree, and we tell people that all the time. If you could go through and listen to all of our webinars that we put out there, because we put tons out there, right? Tons of material. If you can grow your business without ever having to engage us to help us, that to me is like 10 times better than having, than taking the next step and having to pay for us to help you out. Those are great stories, and we get that all the time, especially in the creative agency space. We're like, hey, we took your formulas, we did all this, we made you guys really helped us and got us through a bad period of time, or really kind of gave us clarity on how things work. And it's not because they engaged with us, it's because we helped them and provided them the information that they could do it themselves. And I think that's a huge, that's, to me, that's more satisfying than bringing them on as a client.
Yeah, actually,
agree. Well, and I think that ties to thought. Jamie, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say, I did a sales call the other day with someone that was just too small for us, right? They were only a 2 or 3 person agency, and it just, when I talked to their finances, I'm like, yeah, you guys aren't. I'm not even gonna give you a quote because it's not gonna be worth it. But like, hey, it sounds like you've already got a really good start. You've listened to some of our podcasts. I'm like, send me your stuff. I'll take a quick look at it and see if you're on the right track and have a really good relationship with them. And to Jody's point, like that feels really good, just to be able to again, it's not taking a ton of my time, just taking 45 minutes to look at a spreadsheet, make sure they're applying the metrics correctly and that they're looking at everything right, and then just move on. But I think that's definitely key. And it kind of just a flip side of that, just for everybody out there. I've recently was at a conference and someone mentioned the power of no in sales. And I think the funny thing is like, with our pricing model and with us saying, hey, this is what we are, this is who we are, and like just saying to someone that honestly you can't afford us, like, or just saying for whatever reason, just saying no to someone makes them want you that much more. And again, that's not why we did it. That wasn't the purpose of it. But just like in terms of sales, like I've never heard that before. And someone mentioned it, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. Every time we tell someone that it's just not going to work out, like the tables turn and they start like negotiating with you as versus be like, hey, no, we really want you. We can afford you. Like, no, you really can. And let's just talk and see how I can help. That's just kind of a side point there. Something I've learned recently too. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's the value of being a thought leader. And that, there's not a whole lot of things I necessarily agree with. The firm where I kind of got my start, really appreciative with all the information I took from it. But the big thing that couldn't agree more with the way that they approach it is just being a thought leader it's essential. And you're going to give away a lot of information to a lot of people who never have any intention of using you. And that's okay, because really what you're doing is you're making a contribution to the community that you're servicing. And what you are going to do is for the people who are the right fit, and for the people who are, there's no doubt in my mind, I can give generic advice all day long, and my generic advice is fantastic. I'm not going to pull any punches or pretend like it's not. I know that it's really good. But I know that if I can get a hold of someone's specific situation, the generic advice isn't even close to how good it can be. If people find value in that, awesome. And if people don't find value in that, that's not a problem, because at the end of the day, you got to focus on the people who want to be with you. So I love that. I think that's one thing that really attracted me so much to Summit in the beginning, and one of the reasons why I was so all in whenever I saw it is I was like, this is what I have always historically done. This is the thing I've focused on, because when you do this, you reap dividends from it. You reap the benefits from it.
For sure. Kind of touching based on that thought leadership. With thought leadership, you can be a thought leader by writing books, writing articles, kind of providing education to people, doing speaking engagements. There's a lot of different ways to do it. What are some of the ways that you've really kind of put yourself out there as a thought leader in the dentistry area?
Yeah, so excuse me, historically, before when we could all still travel and speak, I did a lot of speaking. So I was very fortunate that I had the chance to get picked up by some of the larger dental shows. So I've spoken at the ADA before, the American Dental Association, the American Association of Orthodontics, a lot of different regional conferences. So there's one in the Southeast called the Hinman that I've spoken at, and a few others. So that was one of the biggest ways. But the firm where I came from did a regular newsletter for folks, and it was actually subscription based, and had a pretty decent following, and that's been really the angle I have historically taken was writing articles. So I've had the chance, I think at last count, I think I've had 30 or 40 articles published in Dental Economics, which is a larger trade publication, but the shift now for me is going to be YouTube. I've had an interest and fascination in YouTube content development for a long time, and just, my time in the penalty box where I couldn't go out there and advertise and market for what I wanted to do when my covenant ran. That's right.
I was wondering what
spent a lot.
What are you talking about?
I spent that non-compete. That's right. So I spent a lot of time sharpening my axe. Thinking about what do I want to get out there and what do I want to do. So that's going to be kind of the next evolution. Because, Jamie, you were talking about that smaller firm. That's my biggest struggle I have today, is that there's a lot of younger doctors who need help and they need direction and guidance. And to find a way where, if you can create, and this is to me what the brilliance of the course is for Summit, if you can find a way to interact with someone for 16 total hours, but 15 of that's pre-recorded and 1 is customized, that is a great use of everyone's time and a great use of everyone's resources. You can much more affordably share that 15 hours with people. It's basically a cost-sharing arrangement of the time and resources it takes to record, and then you've got your customization to it. So that's really the next step for me, I think, is being able to just make the industry that's made. I've had a great career in dentistry. Help young doctors in particular figure out, hey, do I want to own? Do I want to associate somewhere else? Or do I, and if I do want to own, do I need to buy my own thing, or do I need to build it? But selfishly, that's the next crop of who's going to become VCFO clients. So I don't want to freeze them out or ignore them or not find a way to help them. So that's kind of the goal there, is to expand that thought leadership kind of outside of maybe who my core demographic is for a client, and make sure that we're able to kind of deliver valuable insights for everybody in the whole spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think nowadays, I know whenever I have a question, like, I don't go to Google, I go to YouTube, right? Like, if I have a question, whether it's about like a software or about like a tool or even like an accounting principle, like I'll just go to YouTube and look it up, because I feel like just listening to someone talk about it and be able to demonstrate on the video is just so much easier than having to sit down and read an article. So I think that's just the very common place for people to go. And I think that you're hitting the nail on the head there, is like just to have that resource and be top on the YouTube search list and making sure you have those keywords correctly is going to be key. And I think that because I know that's where I go.
Yeah, it's the golden era of content creation. YouTube. A lot of people think that they've missed the boat, but when you can go online. A little bit of a tangent. When you can go online and a guy who literally pulls off-road vehicles out of holes in the sand has 1 million followers on YouTube, releases videos 3 times a week, and has 300,000 views each time. Me as one of those dedicated viewers to it, shout out Matt's Off-Road Recovery. That's it's crazy. Whatever you look at, what you can accomplish on that medium. And it's so affordable.
Even more fascinating than that is, like, I feel like sometimes when I YouTube something and the video only has like 20,000 views, or it only has like 5,000 views, and it's like it was top of the list, right? So like I'm trying to find, I have a certain topic I want to research, and I search it, and I find this video, and I look at the views, and it only has 5,000 views on it. So it's not just the people like that end up getting the traction. It's all these other videos that are out there too. So even just creating a video that like can find that one person or those thousands of people, like just the fact that there's that kind of power in YouTube is crazy to me.
That's right. Good stuff.
Real quick on the course. I mean, we talk about this all the time, and Jamie, you and I talked about it before the meeting with regard to pipeline. That's one of the we have a complete section built on pipeline, but it's geared really towards service-based companies, because again that's the industry that we serve. In regard to a dentistry pipeline, what does that mean to you? I mean, what do you pull from that, and can you kind of share what your thoughts are on that?
Absolutely. So it's interesting, because I think this is a hard thing for folks in dentistry to wrap their head around, and that is they're salespeople. They're responsible for selling. They have something that they can provide the world, and that thing costs money, and there's a lot of people who do it, and they want to make the argument that they're the best person to be able to do that for them. So I think one thing that we really like to back into, and so like to establish some parameters, like when we look at utilization rate for us is how busy is a doctor compared to how busy do they want to be. And depending on the specialty, kind of depends on how we measure that from a dollar perspective. What the role of insurance is in that practice can oftentimes dictate what we measure that as a dollar perspective. Excuse me, but we spend a little time really getting our hands dirty and understanding quantifications of, in terms of a dollar per day, what is optimal. So then from there, what we do is we kind of backtrack into, and what we do kind of tying into how we interface this with Draft, we use plugins with a lot of the practice management softwares, and we'll go scrape data. So we get my favorites whenever someone's on a cloud-based practice management software, and we can actually just get a login and pull the info. But we pull those things and get them in a CSV and put them into Google Docs. We're working on a way to automate that, but for now, that's what we're doing. And then we use that in order to be able to start to build out, all right, how many new patients are we getting, which is based on a certain exam code that you have inside of your dental practice. How many new patients are we getting, and then how is that impacting the revenue per day that a doctor has? And then kind of extrapolating out that ratio, we figure out, all right, how many new patients do we need in order to be able to achieve that result? And then we back into every step of the way with that number. So if we know that we need 30 new patients a day, and we know that we need 50% of the treatment you prescribe to people we know that we need 15 patients to accept treatment, and then we know that 50% of the patients that you recommend treatment to are going to accept it, then we need 30 new patients. And then from there, if we know someone calls the office and there's there's an 80% chance that they're going to schedule an exam, we know that we need 36 or something, whatever that works out to be, phone calls. And then from there, we know that if we get a 10% call rate, 5% call rate on the advertising we do, we know how many marketing impressions that we need to make. And kind of depending on the size of the enterprise, if they have like a third-party vendor working with them for marketing, we'll help them with that stuff. If they have a dedicated marketing employee, we'll kind of fold that into what they're going to be. That's one of the KPIs that they're responsible for, is being able to keep track of those impressions. And that's where it kind of gets a little difficult. It's a little bit more tangible, and you can wrap your hands around it when the phone rings. But the impressions, that's something we kind of piloted late last year. Obviously, this is stuff we've been tinkering with for a long time, but integrated into the firm from off the rip. And it's worked relatively well to be able to identify that. So, and then there's then it turns into what kind of treatment do we want. Like for orthodontists, it's pretty easy. People are showing up to get their teeth straightened. But for a general dentist, you can have a general dentist who's a Medicaid dentist. You can have a general dentist who's a major cosmetic restoration person, and they have the same training, but not necessarily the same practice. And that's where it kind of gets more customized.
So that's it.
Yeah, you can see Jamie's face is
totally
lighting
up.
up. Pipeline is in the big area.
And I think this is great because it's I've done webinars on this. I've talked with different CPA firms on this, and this is the one area where people kind of give me that blank stare sometimes. And I think the key to me is what you talked about. Like, I understood it, but like you could tell you understood it, and you understood exactly what you were talking about. And I think that's the key, is about being kind of that industry expert. Is when I talk to someone that works in one industry, I can see the brain turning. I can see him being like, well, actually in our industry it's this, but it's all about predicting that future revenue and using numbers to predict that future revenue, and that's exactly what you did there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's the biggest thing there, is that you've taken the industry knowledge you have and you've done exactly that. And so to me that is key. And again, we are right here on time, so I'm glad you got that answer in, because now my brain's turning of like, okay, how can I explain this to other CPA firms going down this road? But I appreciate you coming on today. I think this is really important for our listeners, and again, I think we got a lot out of this conversation, so I want to thank you for being here, and I'll kind of give you the last word. Any final thoughts for anybody listening to this podcast?
I think the biggest thing I would say is, if you're in a position where you're not sure, like if you've been contemplating the course, and like whether you're coming from an accounting side of it, where you're thinking about integrating this more into your practice and being able to elevate some of these relationships, and I think that's the reason why I like to. I think that's one of the reasons why I look at this from the perspective of I had these relationships. They were scaled relationships of what I'm doing now. That was the most nerve-wracking part, was, how do I approach these people about expanding into a much deeper version of our relationship? Like, how do I approach this? And I'm really happy that I made the commitment to Summit and did the course and kind of focused on the methodology. The time savings is tremendous of what you're going to be able to develop. And then it doesn't mean that you're giving up your identity, because as you can tell, I've kind of really heavily customized the content that I had to make it my own and make it fit for what we had. But just the time dividend it creates was tremendous.
Awesome. Well, yeah, like I said, I can definitely tell you got a lot out of this, and you soaked it all in, and that's what we hope from people that take the courses. It's not just those CPE classes where you're half paying attention to. We hope that you're listening to it and you're taking notes the entire time. It's like, oh yeah, that applies to my companies like this. So definitely appreciate you popping on the show. Jody, any final thoughts from you?
No, it's been great getting to know you for sure, Andrew. You're very fresh a breath of air for sure. With that, we tell people that not everybody's made out to being a CFO. You've got to have that personality. You've got to have I don't know if you need to have the industry knowledge right out of the gate, but you need to develop that industry knowledge. You need to learn. And be a thought leader. You need to get out there and write articles and do all the stuff. And I think. From what I understand, you've done really everything that you position yourself extremely well for success, and I think you're seeing that right out of the gate. 5 new clients, average of $50,000 plus per client. That's outstanding. It's going to be a point where, we talked offline earlier. It's going to be a point where you need to hire, not just that 1 or 2 people you've got, but you need to hire 3 or 4 new people, just to keep up with the with the demand that you're going to see. When doing it and becoming that thought leader, you're going to see more demand than you'll probably ever be able to handle, especially right off the gate. I'm sure you've probably stair-stepped your people so that you're not onboarding them all at one time, or giving them windows of opportunity. Hey, we're going to slow roll this. That way they get that service that you would expect. And I'm real excited about what you've done. It's gonna be fun. We'll definitely have you on in a few months to kind of see where you're at with that. If you crashed and burned with those clients, if you gave them the service that you want, and you're just looking for new team members to help you manage them. Absolutely. No, I would I would love that, and just really appreciate the time that you guys gave me today. It was a good conversation, had a ton of fun, and I look forward to being back.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks Andrew, thanks Jody, thanks everybody for listening.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.